you've got all these levers. You might have LIRA, LIF, RSP, RRIF, TFSA, and non-registered, and balancing those to help you meet your lifestyle expenses as well as keeping your taxes low can be a real thing.
Welcome back to Steadyhand's Coffee Break video series, where we share insights to help you, our Canadian clients and friends, navigate your financial future with confidence. Now, if you've already moved into retirement, you likely know that accumulating your wealth and retirement savings is relatively simple compared with the challenges associated with shifting to decumulation. There are just a lot of moving parts. And to help Canadians understand and successfully navigate this shift, we're doing a 3-part series looking at the shift from saving while working to spending in retirement. And that's a transition that brings both financial complexity and lots of emotional weight. Today, we're going to start with a foundational question. What actually happens to your retirement accounts when you retire? And in future videos, we'll address the tax and related considerations of withdrawing from your accounts, as well as the emotional considerations of spending your nest egg. Now, to help us through this journey, I'm joined by Steve Bridge, a certified financial planner with Money Coaches Canada. Now, Steve's an advice-only planner who doesn't sell investments or insurance. He just provides great advice rooted in years of experience helping Canadians retire well and with confidence. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, David. Happy to be here.
Well, let's start at the top. Now, Steve, most Canadians are familiar with RRSPs, TFSAs, and possibly even LIRAs. But what happens to these accounts as they approach or enter retirement?
So a couple of those accounts have rules associated with them. The RRSPs, the Registered Retirement Savings Plans, and the LIRAs, the Locked-in Retirement Accounts, have to be converted to different accounts by the end of the year that you turn 71, and money has to start coming out of them the next year, the year you turn 72. The RRSP are converted to Registered Retirement Income Funds, RRIFs, and LIRAs, locked-in retirement accounts, are converted to life income funds.
So how does this conversion take place? Does it happen automatically?
So you're a financial institution, and I know Steadyhand helps with this. If you're with someone else, they'll help you with this. The investments inside the accounts don't actually have to change. It is the nature of the account that changes. And it's pretty easy. Steadyhand and other institutions have been doing this for thousands of people for many, many years.
And I know, Steve, you work with a lot of DIY investor clients. If I'm a DIY investor client, how do I go about converting my RSP into a RRIF?
Well, again, there would be a little bit more groundwork for those people because they are, as it says in the name, doing it themselves. They have to contact their financial institution who can guide them through the steps. Again, they don't have to convert any or change any of the investments inside the account, but they do have to do more of the work themselves.
Okay. Now, LIRAs, or locked-in retirement accounts, this causes a lot of confusion, I would imagine. Can you just unpack what is a LIRA and what does it become?
Well, LIRA becomes a life income fund, LIF. And the rules around LIFs are that once it's converted, money has to start coming out, just like a RRIF. But LIFs, so LIRA has to be converted to a LIF, or you can purchase a life annuity. So an annuity, as you know, pays a certain amount per month the rest of your life. With the LIFs, they've got minimums that you have to take out as soon as it's converted, the year after it's converted, and they have maximums, which makes them a little bit trickier to manage. So, for example, I'm in British Columbia, so I'll use British Columbia numbers. If I convert my LIRA to a LIF and I'm 65 years old, the minimum that I have to take out is 4%, but there's also a maximum. And at age 65, that's 7.38%. Fast forward to age 75, and I do have a minimum of 5.82% and a maximum I can take out of 9.71%.
What's the guidance around how to do, would you pick the minimum or the maximum? How do you think about that?
Well, usually when I'm working with clients, lifts are, as you said, they're a little bit trickier. I usually set the withdrawals to maximum because it can take a long time to get money out of there. Now, depending on where the LIRA is domiciled or registered, you may have access to a 50%, up to a 50% unlocking provision, which means you can take up to 50% and put it into an RRSP or a RRIF, which is generally a good idea because there's more flexibility with withdrawals from a RRIF. Yes, they have minimums, but as you know, they don't have maximums.
Okay. And if you don't know what a LIRA is, it stands for Locked In Retirement Account. And it's what happens when you leave your employer and you had a defined contribution pension plan of some sort, and you decided to take that as a locked in retirement account with you. And obviously not everybody would have that, but a lot of Canadians for sure would. Now, you're dealing with a lot of complexity with LIRAs and LIFs, and a little bit less complexity with RSPs and RRIFs. But the TFSA, thankfully, doesn't require any challenging conversions. Correct?
That's right. That TFSA, it's a little bit like the ace up your sleeve, if you will, in that it can go on forever. It can even be left to your state. There's no tax implications when you put the money in. There's no tax implications while the money's in the TFSA, and there's no tax implications when you take it out. So it can be great for things like a big purchase if you're helping your child with a wedding or a house, or you want to buy yourself a car or a vacation, because that other money that we talked about, the RRIF and LIF money, is all taxable as income.
Okay. And then you've got another type of account, which would be the non-registered or taxable account. And I guess that's a little bit potentially more complex because you've got the potentiality of being taxed on withdrawals, but not the same way that you're taxed on withdrawals from your RSP or your LIF.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where it gets a little bit technical. And when you're starting to, okay, we can juggle three things maybe relatively easily, but can we juggle 4 or 5 balls at one time? This is where the help of a professional really comes in handy, because you've got all these levers. You might have LIRA, LIF, RSP, RIF, TFSA, and non-registered, and balancing those to help you meet your lifestyle expenses as well as keeping your taxes low can be a real thing. Like I can play the tax game of, you know what, I'm going to spend all my TFSA money this year and not pay any taxes, but it's going to catch up to me later on when I'm taking out larger amounts from my RRIF or LIF or non-registered investments. But non-registered are I think not quite the ace up your sleeve, but maybe call it a jack or queen up your sleeve, in that you do have flexibility, and they can be more tax advantaged than the RRIF or LIF.
Nice to know we have the cards. So we're going to talk about that in more detail in the second video. But as you are working with clients that are getting close to this 71st or 72nd birthday, and they have to begin to convert to these withdrawal mechanisms, are there key decisions or planning steps that you encourage clients to take?
Glad you asked that, David, because the traditional thinking, the common thinking is, okay, I convert my RSP or my LIRA to a RRIF or a LIF at age 71, start taking the money at 72. But with proper planning, it's sometimes advantageous to start those withdrawals much earlier, much earlier, like early 60s, even depending on when you're retiring and your income sources. But you can convert these accounts, the RSP or the LIRA, to RRIFs and LIFs much earlier than age 71. And it can sometimes be really advantageous to do so, to get some of that money out before age 71, 72. And this goes hand in hand with, and I know you've done a video on this as well, timing of when to take Canada Pension Plan or old age security. So now you've got not only the 4 balls in the air, you can add CPPOS, now you're juggling, say, 6 balls at once to try to decide this drawdown or decumulation strategy, and where a professional can really help you make those decisions. And the other thing that I'll say about the conversion is that you don't have to convert the whole thing. You don't have to convert your whole RSP or your whole LIRA to a RRIF or a LIF. You can do a quarter of it or a third of it or a half of it if you like, which might make sense in certain situations.
Wow. So are we up to how many balls have we got going around in the air
We got
now?
at least 6, David, at least 6.
Steve, it's clear there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than just flipping a switch when you turn 71. Money Coaches Canada, Steadyhand, lots of other advice-only financial planners out there have produced tons of free resources. I would encourage you to go and look at the Money Coaches Canada website, sign up for the newsletter. Of course, at Steadyhand, we've got a lot of fantastic planning calculators available for free on our website. I would encourage you to check those resources out. And in our next episode, Steve, we're going to take the next step of looking at how you can actually draw down your accounts in a way that's both smart, tax efficient, and tailored to your specific needs. Steve, thanks again. We look forward to seeing you back in part 2.
Thanks, David. Looking forward to it.